Welcome back to another video here, guys. In this video, I'm going to be looking at this drizzly old lizard pit that I've got in my courtyard. Sydney had been absolutely pounded with rain for about a month, and this thing was absolutely drenched. One thing that I really had to address in this pit was the fact that it wasn't draining properly. I started becoming pretty concerned about the Cunningham skink that was still in here. It's been living in here by itself for a little while now after I unfortunately lost the last blotch blue tongue that I had. That being said, I was starting to wonder that if this was, potentially something that had happened a few times, that it was something that maybe I could have avoided in the future. So trying to learn from my mistakes, I decided to really address this pit and give it a proper overhaul. I started by taking absolutely everything out of the enclosure. I just needed to get rid of everything and see where I was with my bare bones. Here you can see my little skink tucked up nice and dry underneath some of this exfoliated stone. He absolutely loves getting into these little cracks and crevices, as per the species always does. So yes, I kept stripping everything out and eventually I caught the little bugger. He's a bit of a fiery little Cunningham skink, but he's such a cool little animal. Hardy as sin too. This thing's been through absolutely everything and just come out on top. They're one of the toughest lizards in my opinion. If you happen to do something to hurt one of these little buggers, then something's really going wrong in your enclosure, that's for sure. This little guy's been with me for years now. I want to say probably 8 years, something in that sort of vicinity. He's a cool little skink. As you can probably tell by this clip, there's a whole bunch of mulch and dirt and plants and things that have just been absolutely overgrown in here. And it's kind of just turned into like a big, soil soup, if you want to call it something like that. Underneath all of this soil though, there is actually some geotextile fabric just protecting my deck. And this is what's supposed to be allowing it to drain. But I think over time this soil's just become so compact and so thick that it's just not really getting the chance to actually drain away, and this is where half of my problems are occurring. So my plan here was to actually dig up all of this soil and get rid of it, probably put most of it back into my garden beds itself just so it's not going to complete waste. I really had to commit to getting this done because it just would not stop raining. Absolutely rained for weeks on end. So it pretty much won't stop raining at the moment, and it's been doing it for days, so I thought I just need to crack in, getting into this skink's cage. I thought, that's it, I'm just going to work in the rain, bugger it. So after a few days of the skink actually being indoors inside of a tub, I decided to really crack in, get this thing off, and I thought the easiest thing to do would be to actually pull up the garden bed itself off of all the mess, so I could access it a lot easier than breaking my back and get in and scoop all of this stuff into my garden beds. And here's a rare glimpse of the sun actually coming out, and I hadn't seen my shadow in about a week. So it was pretty crazy to actually see that come out. So I got it down to the bare geotextile fabric and gave it a bit of a rough cleanup. My first point of call from there was to actually add in heaps of aggregate. So I just went to a local hardware shop and basically just bought a whole bunch of aggregate just so it would have no chance of not draining out again. I was too lazy and tight to go and buy new geotextile fabric, but I figured this stuff would still work. At the end of the day, it's just there to suit a purpose and it's not actually going to be visually, seen, so it doesn't really matter. As long as it's doing its job, that's my main prerogative. So as you can see here, I'm just going to be adding in a whole bunch of this aggregate all around the edges and throwing in a few extra bags just to try to make sure that it's a nice deep layer. This will not only just give the lizard something else to run around on, but it'll just mean that any water that's kind of like on top has just no chance of not draining. I'm not going to be putting a whole bunch of soil and stuff like that back in this enclosure again. I think it's just too risky and I just don't want to hurt my lizards at the end of the day. I'm trying to do everything to keep them dry. That's my main thing right now. And I just want to make sure that this is my one and done sort of thing for the pit. I don't want to keep readjusting and doing bits and pieces. For the time being, I am actually just going to be chucking all these rocks back in here too, just so I can put the Cunninghams back outside because we are expecting some good weather finally. This wasn't the end of my plans for this actual upgrade though, so I just wanted to kind of do like a temporary thing for this particular day until I could come back with a bit more time and readjust it again. So for now, with just this skink out here, I thought, you know what, I'll just chuck all of these rocks back in here, make some sort of like pretty structure that he can crawl around on and enjoy his time for this week, and I'll come back to it another day. One thing I did want to add in just on top was just a loose layer of essentially some large bark chips. I didn't want anything too fine that it was going to clog up the actual aggregate itself. And again, I'll reiterate, I was just doing a very loose layer on top, so it wasn't going to be like a lot of breaking down of this bark. So with that done, it was time to close up the pit, wait for a little bit better weather, and keep going with the next step. Finally, we had some sunshine, and for me that meant I was going to crack on with this pit, this little upgrade that I'm doing, and it meant that I could get my power tools out and also my Cunninghams. He was going to come back out and enjoy this sunshine. He'd been stuck inside in a temporary enclosure for a few days, and surely he didn't like that. Already I could see that my choice of using aggregate as a substrate inside of this enclosure was a positive, because it was so much drier than it had been in a long time. It was good to actually see that all the pebbles were drying up quite nicely. Obviously the bark on top was pretty dry. It was only a thin layer of bark, but it's good for a bit of aesthetics. I'll probably end up putting a whole bunch of leaf litter or something in there, but I'm still a little bit cautious about clogging up all of those nice little gaps inside the aggregate. One thing that I was actually planning on doing was adding in the blue tongue skink that I got from that sort of gift in. I was going to pop him outside in this enclosure too, but I needed to make a proper hide for him. I wasn't particularly worried about the Cunninghams and the rocks because, that's what they do in the bush. But with the Cunninghams, I wanted to kind of form some sort of like burrow. And essentially I had a whole bunch of substrates kind of kicking around, so I just thought I'd mix a whole bunch of these stuffs together and just kind of make a bit of a blend. One thing that I've always struggled with is when I used the corrugated kind of like plastic sheet, that clear sheet that you would have seen me putting on top of the enclosure before, I essentially used that as a rain cover that I'd take on and off. But due to my kind of busy lifestyle and stuff, I'm not always at home to be able to kind of take it on and off as the weather pleases. So what I decided to do was essentially knock together this frame out of a whole bunch of spare timber and raise it up above the actual pit itself to make some sort of rain shield, if you will. So it will be a permanent fixture where essentially I'm actually going to leave it up and, in place. That being said, it's not going to be perfect. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of rain and stuff that gets around. But that being said, it's better than nothing, and it's probably better than what I'm doing now. As you can see, I just gave it a quick coat of paint using some old tin cans of spray paint that I had kicking around too, and fastened it onto the back of this enclosure. It's truly nothing fancy, but so far it has been functional. My next step was actually adding in the little blue tongue burrow. I was actually going to dig this down a little bit too in the hopes of some sort of insulation essentially. It also meant that the access part of the burrow was a little bit more level to the ground rather than being too raised up. Again, I was going to hide all of this using all of the stone that was in here too, as best as I could. I still want it to look a little bit nice. I don't want it to look like a plastic box hidden in the corner by a bunch of rocks, but I suppose that's what it's going to be at the end of the day. From there, I decided to add in a whole bunch more bark just to kind of bulk that up a little bit. And then it was pretty much time to put on the little cap to the, I'll call it the dry side for lack of a better term. And it's also a little bit of a shady side too, because I've got this shade cloth that I can drape over the whole thing if needed, that I kind of pin down on this side as well. One of the other things that I thought I'd do is I'd add a couple of these kind of like ceramic or stone tiles or stepping stone type things on top of here too. to pin this particular lid down. Something that I did discover in the future though was that it wasn't 100% lizard safe, and I'll explain that in a future video. From there, all I needed to really do was to nip down the actual lid to this enclosure as well, and then it was time to put the lizards in. Here again is my beautiful Cunningham skink. That's actually a really beautiful skink. I don't kind of appreciate this lizard nearly as much as what I should. But as I said earlier, hardy as sin, such a good little lizard. It's always basking out in the open and stuff too, so it's a lizard that I can always see. I really do enjoy it. From there, it was time to add in the other resident as well, which was actually going to be my eastern blue tongue skink from the lizard pit in the shed. I thought this would actually do really good outside. It's a nice chunky hardy lizard too, and so far so good. He's been out there for a couple of months now, and he seems to be loving life. This humble old bluey is affectionately known as Stubbs, as per the previous owner's nickname for it. That being said, I think I should re-nickname it to Houdini, and you'll find out why in a future video. But between it and its other friend that decided to escape the pit, yeah, I've had an interesting experience, but we'll touch on that in the future. So the actual bit of like clear polycarbonate roofing obviously will cut out a whole bunch of the UV, but as you can see here, there is a stack of UV coming in on the different angles and stuff, so yeah, it'll cut out that midday UV, but there's plenty of morning and afternoon UV to be had, so I'm not particularly worried about UVB access. And as you can see, it's really just a couple of simple upgrades. It's nothing fancy at the end of the day, but it means my pit will be open topped, so it's way easier for me to be actually putting food in and out, changing water bowls, that sort of stuff. It'll be better for me to view my animals. As you can see, the little Cunningham's basking in the sun here. I'm stoked to have been addressing the actual biggest problem there, which is the actual drainage of the pit too. That was my real big concern. But now that that's done and dusted, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know my Bluey and my little Cunningham skink will be enjoying this pit for time to come. So guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and check out some more videos while you're here. I'd really appreciate it. Take care. Catch you next time.